By sunrise, my pencil case was lying open on my desk like a body prepared for an autopsy. 3 black pens, 2 blue pens, 1 transparent ruler with a crack through the 7-centimeter mark, a plain eraser with the corners rubbed round, 2 sharpened pencils.
No folded slips.
No formula cards. No answers written in the lining. No miracle tucked between the zipper and the plastic seam. I arranged everything in a neat row under the yellow lamp in my dorm room while rain crawled down the window and the academy loudspeaker tested itself outside with a pop of static that made my shoulders jerk. In my first life, I had carried that same pencil case into Hall D without thinking. I had been too frightened of failing to worry about being framed, too exhausted from studying to understand that the girl who hugged me before the exam had pressed more than comfort into my hand. The inspectors found 6 micro notes in my pencil case that morning, each one written in my handwriting. Or close enough. Folded like little teeth. Hidden under the fabric flap. Taped where only someone who knew the inspection rhythm would know to hide them. By noon, every candidate in my cohort had whispered my name like dirt. By evening, the disciplinary board had called me the organizer of a cheating ring I had never joined. By the end of that year, my scholarship was gone, my acceptance was revoked, and the same classmates who had actually hidden notes in their own cases watched me leave school with wet eyes and clean records. Then time, for reasons I still did not pretend to understand, dragged me back to the morning of the National Laureate examination, and the first thing I did was not cry, pray, or scream into my pillow. I dumped my pencil case upside down under the lamp and counted every object like a woman counting bullets. I was still lining the pens by length when the knock came. Soft, patient, and false. 3 taps, then a pause, then the voice everyone in St. Bay Academy trusted more than the school bell. Mira? Are you awake? Celeste Anwin did not open doors without permission. She floated outside them until people begged her to come in. That was one of her gifts, making intrusion feel like kindness. In our class, she was the golden girl with honey brown hair, soft eyes, charity club badges, and teachers who lowered their voices when they spoke to her as if brilliance were delicate. In my first life, she had entered my room that morning holding a steamed bun and a red luck charm, told me my hands were shaking, helped sip my pencil case, and kissed my cheek before we walked to the exam hall together. 10 minutes later, she had been the first person to gasp when the inspector pulled the micro notes from my case. Mira, she had whispered, exactly loud enough for the row behind us to hear. What did you do? The memory passed through me so sharply that I almost laughed. Instead, I placed my eraser at the end of the row and opened the door with my body blocking the desk. Celeste stood there in her cream cardigan, already beautiful, already tragic, already holding a paper cup of sweet milk tea with both hands like an offering. Behind her, 2 girls from our cohort hovered near the stairwell pretending to check their phones. Nora with a silver hair clip, Yvette with the pearl bracelet. In my first life, both had signed witness statements saying they had seen me handle folded papers suspiciously before the exam. This morning, their eyes darted past my shoulder, hunting for the pencil case that was supposed to be unguarded, zipped, and easy. You look pale, Celeste said, stepping forward as if concern gave her right of entry. I brought tea. You always forget breakfast when you're nervous. I smiled and did not move. The hallway smelled of damp carpet, laundry powder, and the oily breakfast noodles from the cafeteria below. Somewhere down the corridor, a toilet flushed. Someone laughed too loudly. The world was disgustingly ordinary for a day that had once destroyed me. I already ate, I said. Celeste's expression flickered so fast that anyone else would have missed it. A tiny pause. A tiny calculation. Then warmth returned like a curtain dropping. That's good. We should walk together, then. Hall D checks start at 8. If we're early, we can get through before the line gets insane. Before the line got insane. Before inspections became stricter. Before supervisors started emptying cases instead of peeking inside them. That was the rhythm she knew. That was the rhythm she had used. In our academy, exam inspections happened in waves. Early arrivals got the fast check from senior prefects. Later arrivals got the full desk emptying procedure from external invigilators. Celeste's little ring had survived because they were always early, always smiling, always trusted. They carried cheat slips under pencil case flaps, inside eraser sleeves, behind ruler stickers, and sometimes in the hollow caps of pens. The inspectors saw tidy students with expensive stationery and moved them through. In my first life, Celeste planted the worst evidence on me because she needed one sacrifice when rumors of leaks reached the examination office. This time, I tilted my head and said, "You go ahead. I need to reorganize my stationery." Her eyes dropped to my hand, then lifted again. "Reorganize?" "Yes," I said. "I want everything visible today." That was the first small crack in her plan. Not enough to break it. Enough to make her listen. Celeste laughed softly, the way she did when teachers made jokes she had already heard. "Mira, don't be dramatic. It's just a pencil case." "Exactly," I said. "So there's no reason to hide anything inside it." The hallway changed temperature. Nora stopped pretending to scroll. Yvette's thumb froze on her phone screen. Celeste's smile did not move, but her fingers tightened around the cup until the lid clicked. "Of course," she said. "No reason at all." She recovered beautifully. That was why people followed her into ruin. A lesser girl would have panicked, insisted, pushed into my room, or tried to touch the case. Celeste only lifted the cup. "Take this anyway. A sip for luck." I looked down at the milk tea. In my first life, I had drunk it and spent the first hour of the exam fighting a fog in my head so thick that even the questions seemed to float away from me. Later, I convinced myself it was anxiety. Later still, when no one believed me about the planted notes, I stopped trusting any memory that made me look like a victim instead of a fool. This morning, I took the cup from her, held her gaze, and poured it slowly into the potted fern beside my door. The tea soaked into the soil with a soft, obscene sound. Nora made a choking noise. Celeste blinked once. "Mira," she said, and for the first time her voice had an edge under the sugar. "That was rude." I handed back the empty cup. "So was killing me." She did not understand the words, not fully, but she understood the threat. Her face smoothed into pity. "You're under too much pressure." There it was, the sentence that had framed my whole first life. Pressure, stress, jealousy, instability. Every cruel thing done to me had been explained as something I imagined because I was too intense, too ambitious, too poor, too desperate to belong beside girls whose families donated buildings. I leaned against the doorframe and let the silence grow. Celeste hated silence because she could not control who filled it. "Maybe," I said. "Then you should go without me." She looked past me one more time. On my desk, just visible over my shoulder, the empty pencil case lay flattened beneath the lamp. Her pupils shifted. She saw it. She saw the pens outside it. She saw the plastic flap turned inside out. She saw the morning she had planned closing like a door. Then she smiled so sweetly that I almost admired her. "All right, don't be late." She turned, cardigan swinging, and the two girls followed her down the corridor like birds following a wire. I watched until they disappeared into the stairwell. Only then did I close the door, lock it, and take out my phone. The message I had scheduled the night before sat ready in drafts, addressed to the External Examination Integrity Office, not the school, not the homeroom teacher who loved Celeste, not the deputy principal who had once told me girls like me needed to manage optics. Attached were photographs I had taken in the first hour after rebirth. Celeste's leaked group chat still open on an old tablet she thought I had lost, screenshots of messages about case packing, flap notes, fast lane inspection, and one message from Nora saying, "If Mira panics, put the heavyset in hers." I did not send it yet. Evidence was useful. Timing was better. At 7:38, I left my dorm with my stationery sealed in a transparent food bag instead of a pencil case. It looked ridiculous, and that was the point. A few girls in the hallway stared. One whispered. Another laughed into her sleeve. I let them. In my first life, I had tried so hard not to look strange that I walked straight into a trap designed for obedient girls. This time, I wanted witnesses to remember exactly what they saw. My pens loose in clear plastic, my eraser unwrapped, my ruler naked, my pencil case folded flat and clipped outside my bag like a dead flag. The rain had stopped by then, leaving the campus wet and shiny. St. Vay Academy looked expensive in the morning. Slate roofs, white stone paths, manicured hedges, bronze founder statues pretending they had never accepted bribes. Candidates streamed toward the examination wing in navy uniforms, clutching admission cards and whispering formulas under their breath. Above the courtyard arch, a banner read Honor Before Achievement. I almost stopped walking just to appreciate the comedy. Ahead, Celeste stood with half our cohort near the fountain, already conducting fear like an orchestra. She touched shoulders, adjusted collars, murmured encouragement, checked watches. Her pencil case was pale blue silk with embroidered lilies, the same one she had carried in my first life. Pretty enough that no prefect had dared empty it. Around her, the others had similar cases: leather, velvet, designer canvas, hard-shell boxes with secret compartments sold as stationery organizers on expensive websites. They looked prepared. They looked polished. They looked guilty to me in ways the world had refused to see before. Celeste spotted the transparent food bag and laughed. Not loudly. Loudly would have looked cruel. She laughed just enough for everyone near her to turn. Mira, what is that? My stationery, I said. I emptied my pencil case. A ripple moved through the group. Some amused. Some irritated. Some afraid. The class monitor, Hannah, stepped forward with her clipboard pressed to her chest. She was one of Celeste's loyal little judges, a girl who believed rules were sacred until rich people needed them bent. You can't bring a food bag into the hall. I checked the regulations, I said. Transparent stationery bags are allowed. Fabric pencil cases are subject to inspection. Hannah frowned because she disliked sentences that sounded like documents. Celeste tilted her head. You really are nervous. No, I said, holding up the bag so the morning light passed through it. I'm careful. A boy from the back, Adrian, snorted. Careful people don't make themselves look suspicious. I turned to him. In my first life, Adrian had hidden a folded chemistry formula under the cardboard insert of his pencil case and later posted online that I deserved expulsion because cheaters damaged honest students. Then you should be fine, I said. His smile died. It was a tiny victory, but tiny victories mattered. They were stones in the road that made the carriage wobble before it overturned. The first pattern interruption came before we reached the inspection queue. A white van was parked outside Hall D, and 3 people in gray jackets were unloading metal trays, evidence bags, and portable scanners. Not academy prefects. Not friendly teachers. External integrity officers. The cohort slowed, as if a hand had pressed against all their chests at once. Celeste's smile held, but only because she had trained it like a muscle. Hannah whispered, "Why are they here?" Nobody answered. I could have. I had sent an anonymous tip at 6:05, not enough to accuse, just enough to trigger the office's existing suspicion. In my first life, rumors of concealed notes had reached them after the exam, when it was too late to inspect everyone equally and much easier to blame the poorest scholarship girl with evidence in her case. This time, I gave them the rumor before the doors opened. I watched an officer tape a notice to the entrance. All stationery cases, TO, be fully emptied. Random material testing in effect. Candidates refusing inspection will be barred. The courtyard noise changed. Whispering became buzzing. Buzzing became panic, with perfume on it. Celeste turned to me, and for half a second I saw the real girl underneath. Not golden, not gentle, just furious that the floor had moved before she stepped. Did you know about this? She asked. About exam security?
I said, no.
But I support it. Her mouth twitched. Of course you do. The line split into 3 lanes. Candidates placed their bags on tables, emptied pockets, opened calculators, lifted water bottles to check labels, and poured stationery into trays. I chose the lane with the oldest-looking officer, a woman with silver hair cut to her chin and eyes that had probably frightened better liars than Celeste. Her badge said M. Rourke. She looked at my transparent bag, then at the empty pencil case clipped outside my backpack. You emptied this already? She asked. Yes, ma'am. Why? The question fell sharp and clean. Behind me, several students leaned closer. This was the moment Celeste wanted. If I sounded paranoid, I became suspicious. If I said nothing, she could write my story for me later. I placed the flattened pencil case in the tray and answered loudly enough for the lane to hear. Because last night someone joked that pencil cases were easy places to hide notes, and I decided I didn't want anything inside mine except air. A murmur ran down the line. Officer Rourke did not smile, but one eyebrow lifted. Who joked? I can provide names privately if needed, I said. That sentence did more damage than an accusation. Names privately meant records. Records meant no performance. Records meant Celeste could not cry her way into controlling the narrative in front of the crowd. Officer Rourke held my gaze for a long second, then nodded. Tray 2. Empty every item. I emptied the transparent bag. Pens rolled. Pencils clicked. The eraser landed with a dull tap. The ruler flashed under the inspection light. She picked up the pencil case, turned it inside out, pressed the seams, ran a detector along the zipper, and found nothing because there was nothing to find. Clear, she said, and stamped my admission card with blue ink. The sound of that stamp hit me harder than I expected. In my first life, no one had stamped me clear of anything. I did not enter the hall immediately. I stepped aside to the waiting area where cleared candidates could stand before seating began, and I watched. That was another thing I had not done in my first life. I had been too busy surviving to observe the machinery that destroyed me. Celeste entered Officer Rourke's lane 2 students after me, because pride would not let her switch away from the lane where I had been cleared. She placed her silk pencil case in the tray with graceful annoyance, as if the procedure were beneath her, but she was too well-bred to complain. Open it fully, Officer Rourke said. Celeste did. Pens. Highlighters. A gold mechanical pencil. A soft white eraser in a paper sleeve. A ruler with a floral sticker across one side.
Sticky tabs.
Nothing obvious. She had expected a peek, not an autopsy. Rourke removed every item. She peeled the eraser sleeve back.
Clean.
Opened the pen barrels.
Clean.
Lifted the ruler. The floral sticker curled slightly at one corner, and Celeste's left hand moved half an inch toward it before she stopped herself. Rourke saw it.
So did I.
So did the camera mounted above the table. The officer peeled the sticker away with a fingernail. Under it, in ink so small it looked like dust, were 8 lines of legal principles from the civic reasoning section. The courtyard seemed to inhale. Celeste laughed once, a breathy sound of disbelief. That isn't mine. Rourke placed the ruler into an evidence sleeve. Candidate, step to the side. No. Wait, that ruler was in the common study room yesterday. Anyone could have. Step to the side. Celeste looked over at me then, and the hatred in her eyes was so naked, I felt almost warmed by it. She had not expected to be caught first. She had expected me to burn first, and everyone else to scatter in the smoke. But Celeste was only the match. The fire reached the others fast. Nora's silver hair clip trembled as she emptied her pencil case, and 3 folded slips fell from behind the inner mesh pocket. Yvette tried to claim her pearl bracelet had snagged on the zipper, then watched an officer remove a strip of paper wrapped around the elastic band inside her pen. Adrian argued so loudly that another inspector came over, opened his hard-shell case, and found a laminated formula sheet tucked beneath the removable base. Hannah, the class monitor, kept saying, "This is a misunderstanding," while officers removed a sequence of color-coded notes from the cardboard backing of her sticky tab packet. One by one, polished candidates became shaking children. The waiting area filled with cleared students staring through the glass wall. Some looked horrified. Some looked vindicated. Some looked afraid because they had known enough to be guilty in spirit if not in stationery. Celeste stood beside the evidence table, chin high, face pale, while the officers laid out item after item in sealed sleeves.
It should have satisfied me.
It did not. Not yet. Because in my first life, Celeste had not only hidden her own notes. She had planted mine. If I let the inspection end with individual discoveries, she might still survive by becoming one girl among many, a victim of shared pressure, a tragic overachiever who made one mistake. I needed the center of the web exposed. I needed them to see that the notes were not random. They were coordinated. They were written, distributed, assigned, and planted. So I stepped back into Officer Rourke's line and said, "Ma'am, I need to submit a concern." Celeste's head snapped toward me. Rourke looked up from sealing Adrian's case.
Now.
Before seating, I said, "It relates to the materials you're finding." She studied me for half a second, then gestured to a side table beneath the camera. "Speak." My voice felt calm in a way my body did not. My heartbeat was everywhere. Throat, wrists, knees, fingertips. I handed her my phone with the email draft open. There is a group chat. I am not in the active group anymore, but I have screenshots from a backup device showing discussion of hiding notes in pencil cases and assigning one candidate as the fallback if inspection happened after the exam. The side table became silent before the rest of the courtyard did. Silence spread strangely, like ink dropped in water. Rourke did not touch the screen immediately. "Are you making a formal report?" "Yes." "You understand false reports carry penalties?" "Yes." "Unlock the phone and place it flat." I did. My reflection hovered faintly in the black edge of the screen, a girl with damp hair, pale lips, and eyes older than her face. Rourke scrolled.
Once. Twice.
Her expression did not change, but the air around us did. She called another officer, then another. They read the screenshots, compared names to candidate numbers, and began pulling students from the cleared line back into inspection. Celeste spoke my name like a threat. "Mira." I did not look at her. She said it again louder. "Mira, don't do this." That almost made me laugh, because she had said the same thing in my first life when I begged her to tell the truth. "Don't do this," she had whispered while I cried outside the disciplinary office. "Don't make it worse for everyone." A second wave of inspection began, and this one had teeth. Officers did not merely search pencil cases. They compared handwriting, note formats, paper types, ink colors, folding styles. They found that the slips in Nora's case matched the ones under Celeste's ruler sticker. They found that Hannah's tabs were numbered according to the same section codes mentioned in the chat. They found that Adrian's laminated sheet had a corner mark matching a template file shared by Celeste under the name Review Grid. Then they found the planted set. Not in my pencil case. That was the important part. They found it in Yvette's bag, tucked inside a pink envelope labeled Mira Emergency. The envelope had been waiting for the moment when my case could no longer receive it. Maybe Celeste planned to slip it in during the walk. Maybe Nora was supposed to do it in the queue. Maybe Yvette held it as backup after she saw my transparent bag. It did not matter. Officer Rourke opened the envelope with gloved hands, and 6 folded micro-notes slid onto the table like a memory crawling out of its grave. My handwriting stared back at me, or the imitation of it. Looped M, slanted R, too careful on the final A. I felt my knees weaken, not from fear but from recognition. Those were the exact notes that had ended my first life. Same folding pattern, same topics, same little fake mistake in the second line, where the word jurisdiction was missing the second I. In my first life, the board used that mistake to prove I had written them under stress. This time, the mistake proved the notes had been prepared before I even arrived. "Candidate Celeste Anwin," Officer Rourke said, voice flat enough to cut glass. "Do you know why an envelope containing materials marked for another candidate is in candidate Yvette Marlowe's bag?" Celeste's lips parted. Every person in the courtyard looked at her. She had an answer. Of course she had an answer. Girls like Celeste never walked into battle without spare masks. "No," she said softly. "But Mira has been acting strangely all morning. She said frightening things to me." She poured out the drink I brought her. "She may have planted that envelope to hurt me. In another life, those words would have worked because the evidence would have been in my case, and my anger would have looked like guilt. This time, Rourke only looked at Yvette. "Candidate Marlowe?" Yvette's face collapsed. "Not fully. Not confession yet. But enough." "I didn't know what was inside," she whispered. Celeste closed her eyes for half a second. "Yvette." There was warning in the softness. Yvette heard it and shook harder. "She told me to hold it. She said if Mira changed bags again, Nora would handle it. I didn't know they were notes. You didn't know the envelope labeled with another candidate's name contained materials intended for that candidate? Rourke asked. Yvette began crying. Not pretty tears. Terrified ones. We were only supposed to scare her. Celeste said if Mira got questioned, the exam office would cancel her eligibility and the rest of us could still sit. She said they already suspected someone and needed a clean story. The courtyard erupted. Celeste turned white. I finally looked at her. She looked smaller without the crowd believing her. The second interruption came from inside the hall. At 8:12, before anyone had been seated, the chief examiner opened the double doors and stepped out with a microphone. He was a thin man in a charcoal suit, with a face like folded paper and a voice that carried without effort. All candidates will remain in the courtyard until further notice. Any candidate found with unauthorized written material, concealed notes, planted materials, or evidence of coordinated misconduct will be removed from examination eligibility pending formal review. Candidates cleared by external integrity officers will be reseated in Hall B after a revised seating plan is issued. A sound moved through the crowd, half groan, half panic. Revised seating plan. That meant the old plan was dead. The fast lane trick was dead. The planted case story was dead. Celeste's eyes flashed toward the hall doors, and I knew she understood what I understood. If she could not sit the exam, she could not outrank me, could not claim pressure, could not bury the scandal under achievement. Her whole life had been built on winning before anyone looked too closely. Now everyone was looking before she could win. This is illegal, Hannah shouted, suddenly brave because fear had nowhere else to go. You can't disqualify half a cohort based on screenshots. The chief examiner looked at her. No one has been sanctioned based on screenshots alone. They are being removed based on unauthorized materials found in their possession and corroborating evidence. Hannah's mouth closed. The difference mattered. It was the difference that saved me. In my first life, they had used materials found in my possession and ignored all corroborating context. This time, context had arrived first and possession betrayed the right people. Celeste tried one final performance. She stepped forward, tears shining in her eyes. One hand pressed to her chest as if her heart needed witnesses. Sir, please. I accept responsibility for my ruler. I don't know how that sticker got there, but I should have checked. But this accusation that I organized something, that I targeted Mira, that I involved others, it's cruel. We're under pressure. We all are. I have never wanted anything except to help my classmates. Her voice trembled on the word help. It worked on some of them. I saw hesitation in the faces of candidates who had not been caught, who wanted the world to remain understandable, who needed Celeste to be good because they had borrowed goodness from standing near her. Then, Officer Rourke connected my phone to a portable screen. She did not ask for permission from the crowd. She did not dramatize. She enlarged one screenshot. Celeste's username appeared at the top of the chat, beside a profile picture of a white lily. Her message glowed in black text against the pale background. Mira is the safest fallback. Scholarship students always look desperate. If anything triggers, keep your cases clean and make sure hers carries the full civic set. Nobody breathed. Then another message. Early lane only. Prefect skim. Externals empty. Don't be stupid. Then another. If she empties the case, switch to envelope. Yvette holds. Nora plants if possible. The courtyard did not erupt this time. It froze. That was worse for Celeste. Noise gave her something to ride. Silence left her standing alone with her own words. She looked at me then, not with fury, not with fear, but with betrayal. As if I had broken a promise by refusing to be destroyed properly. You were never supposed to see that, she whispered. I stepped closer, just enough for her to hear without needing to raise my voice. I saw everything the first time. Her eyes narrowed. She still did not understand, but she understood enough to hate me for surviving. 2 officers moved to either side of her. Candidate Anwin, you are removed from examination eligibility pending formal investigation. Please surrender your admission card and come with us. For the first time in all the years I had known her, Celeste did not look graceful. She looked 17. She looked trapped. My father is on the Academy Council, she said. It came out too quickly, stripped of softness. Officer Rourke held out a plastic evidence sleeve. Then he will be informed through the appropriate channel. Celeste's admission card shook in her hand as she surrendered it. The blue silk pencil case followed. Her ruler, her pens, her perfect little tools. Around her, the rest of the cohort began to break. Nora sobbed that Celeste told them everyone did it. Adrian shouted that he never used the notes, only carried them. Hannah demanded a lawyer despite being too young to understand how badly that sentence sounded in a school courtyard. Yvette kept repeating, I didn't plan it, which was not the same as I didn't plan to. One by one, they were let out through the side gate where parents and cameras could not yet see them. Not in handcuffs. This was school, not prison. But there are ways to be escorted that feel louder than chains. I should have felt triumphant when Celeste disappeared through the gate. Instead, I felt empty for several seconds, like my body had expected grief and received silence. Revenge, I discovered, was not a song swelling in the background. It was paperwork. It was a stamp on an admission card. It was a gloved hand sealing an evidence bag. It was the absence of poison in your tea, the absence of notes in your pencil case, the absence of people clapping while you were ruined. Officer Rourke returned my phone after copying the evidence through an official transfer. You'll need to give a full statement after the examination, she said. Can I still sit? The question came out smaller than I wanted. She looked at my cleared tray, my transparent bag, my stamped card.
Yes.
You were cleared before the report, and the materials were not in your possession. My throat tightened. Thank you. She did not soften exactly, but her voice lowered. For future reference, Candidate Vale, when you suspect organized misconduct, report it before exam day if possible. I almost smiled. I'll try to be earlier next time. She gave me a look that suggested she did not know whether I was joking. Neither did I. At 8:44, the cleared candidates were moved to Hall B under a revised seating plan printed so quickly the paper was still warm. My new seat was C27, near the side windows where rainwater tapped against the glass in uneven rhythms. My transparent stationery bag sat on the desk. My empty pencil case, inspected and tagged clear, rested beside it like a witness acquitted after years of wrongful imprisonment. Around me, the room felt strange. Smaller without Celeste's orbit. Quieter without the cohort whispering through hidden channels. Some candidates avoided looking at me because guilt is contagious even when innocence is not. Others stared openly, trying to decide whether I was lucky, ruthless, or frightening. I did not care anymore. The chief examiner read the rules. No unauthorized materials. No communication. No electronic devices. No leaving during the first hour. His voice blurred around the edges as the paper landed face down on my desk. In my first life, I never finished this exam. I spent that morning in a side office, crying while adults asked me questions designed to prove what they had already decided. This time, when the bell rang, I turned the paper over and saw the first question clearly. Not floating. Not fogged by spiked tea. Not trembling through humiliation.
Clear.
Explain the ethical duty of disclosure in institutional settings. I nearly laughed. Then I picked up my black pen and began. The exam itself was not cinematic. That mattered. There were no trumpets when I knew an answer, no flashback when I solved a case analysis, no ghost of my first life leaning over my shoulder to whisper justice. There was only work. Hard, ordinary work. My hand cramped halfway through the second section. My stomach growled because I had skipped Celeste's tea and eaten only dry toast. The girl in front of me sniffed every 30 seconds until I wanted to donate my entire future in exchange for a tissue. At one point, thunder cracked so loudly that half the hall flinched and the invigilator paused beside the windows to check for leaks. Life kept being life, rude and physical and unpolished, even on the morning fate changed direction. I answered the ethics question with more bitterness than the marking guide probably required. I wrote about how silence protects misconduct. I wrote about how institutions fail when they prefer convenient guilt over complicated truth. I wrote about the obligation to report systems, not just individuals, because fraud rarely survives alone. My pen moved faster. For the first time, I was not writing to prove I deserved a future. I was writing from inside, one I had already taken back. When the final bell rang, the hall exhaled. Papers were collected row by row. Nobody moved until instructed. Nobody whispered. Nobody dared test the mood of a room that had watched half its legends collapse before breakfast. I capped my pen, placed it beside the others, and waited while my answer booklet disappeared into the stack. The invigilator checked my candidate number against the revised list and nodded. Such a tiny gesture. Such a ridiculous thing to ache over. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The courtyard gleamed under thin sunlight, every puddle holding a broken piece of sky. Cleared candidates gathered in cautious clusters. The missing ones left spaces everywhere. Celeste's usual circle by the fountain was empty, except for one abandoned umbrella turning slowly in the wind. I was halfway across the courtyard when my homeroom teacher, Mrs. Alcott, hurried toward me with her scarf slipping off one shoulder. In my first life, she had stood behind the disciplinary table and said, "Mira, I want to believe you, but the evidence is troubling." This time, her face looked pale and deeply unsettled. "Mira," she said, "are you all right?" I almost answered politely. Habit is a collar even after you cut the leash. Instead, I said, "No." But I sat the exam. She flinched. "The office will need to speak with you later. About the screenshots." "I know. Why didn't you tell me first?" That question held injury, as if my distrust had wounded her more than her failure had wounded me. I looked at her scarf, damp at the ends, and thought of the girl I had been, begging adults to look past the convenient story. Because last time, you wanted to believe me only after evidence made it safe. She had no answer to that.
Of course she didn't.
Adults love truth when it arrives properly filed. They fear it when it stands in front of them shaking. I left her by the fountain and walked to the old library steps, where my younger brother was waiting under the arch with a paper bag of chestnut buns and panic written all over his face. Julian was 14, too thin, too serious, and in my first life, he had punched a boy who called me a cheat, earning himself a suspension that followed him into every scholarship interview afterward. This morning, I had sent him one message before the exam. "Don't come to Hall D. Wait at the library." Trust me, when he saw me, he ran so fast he nearly slipped. "You're okay?" he demanded. "They said people got taken out. They said Celeste got inspected," I said. He stared at me, then at my transparent bag, then back at me. "Did you do something?" I took a chestnut bun from the paper bag and bit into it. It burned my tongue. I welcomed the pain because it belonged to now, not then. I emptied my pencil case. Julian looked offended by the simplicity. "That's it. That was enough." He laughed once, disbelieving, then started crying, which made him furious. He wiped his face with his sleeve and muttered that he had allergies. I pretended to believe him. We sat on the library steps eating buns while the academy behind us rearranged itself around the hole Celeste had left in it. The investigation did not end that day. Stories like this never end when the villain is escorted out, no matter what people want from revenge. They continue in offices with bad coffee, in parent meetings, in legal letters written by fathers on councils, in whispered attempts to soften words like fraud into mistake. Over the next week, I gave 3 statements. Officer Rourke attended 2 of them. The examination office recovered deleted chat records from cloud backups. They matched the micronotes to a document created on Celeste's tablet, edited by Hannah, printed through the library account Adrian had borrowed, and distributed according to a list Nora saved under the file name Case Packing. They found access logs showing Celeste entered the common study room after midnight the night before the exam and spent 11 minutes near the lockers, where my bag had been stored during dinner. They found the teacup in the fern soil because I told them where to look, and while proving its contents was more complicated than a story would like, the residue was enough to add another ugly question to her file. Parents came to campus in expensive coats and louder cars. Some cried. Some threatened. Some insisted their children had been pressured. Perhaps they had. Pressure does not make innocence. By Friday, The Academy announced that 26 candidates from our cohort were disqualified from the National Laureate examination for coordinated possession of unauthorized materials, attempted evidence planting, and integrity violations. Their scores were voided before scoring began. Their merit list eligibility was suspended for 3 years. Celeste Anwin, named as the organizer, was permanently barred from sitting through St. Vay Academy or any affiliated testing center again. The public notice did not include my name. That was the strangest mercy. In my first life, my name had been everywhere: disciplinary bulletin, scholarship withdrawal, gossip pages, anonymous forums where people debated whether poor students were more likely to cheat. This time, the Academy tried very hard to keep me invisible because invisibility protected them too. A reporting candidate had assisted the investigation. A candidate previously targeted for evidence planting had been cleared. A student witness had provided crucial digital records. I was all of those, and none of them. Celeste's supporters searched for me anyway. Anonymous messages arrived calling me jealous, unstable, cruel, a snake, a traitor to my cohort. I read 3, deleted the rest, and changed my privacy settings. That was another thing I learned. Survival did not require listening to every person disappointed that you were harder to kill than expected. A week after the exam, the preliminary results came out. I ranked 7th nationally, not 1st. In my first life, I had imagined that justice would make me shine brighter than everyone, that once the lies were cleared, the world would discover I was secretly unmatched. But I was 7th. I had missed 2 subparts in the policy analysis section. I had misquoted 1 statute. I had written 1 paragraph with more anger than precision. 7th was real. 7th was mine. I printed the result and taped it above my desk beside the flattened pencil case, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that a future did not need to be perfect to be stolen back. Celeste came to see me once before her family withdrew her from campus. She waited outside the library at dusk, wearing a black coat too heavy for the weather, her hair tied back without ribbons. Without her circle, without her cardigan, without the Academy lighting that loved her, she looked almost plain. I considered walking past. I almost did. But some endings demand witnesses. Was it worth it? She asked.
No επάλεγει. Non explanation.
Just the question every guilty person asks when consequences finally arrive, as if the victim is responsible for measuring the cost. Yes, I said. Her mouth tightened. You ruined 26 people. No, I said. I refused to carry what 26 people hid. She looked away first. That pleased me more than it should have. You don't understand what it's like, she said. Everyone expected me to win. My father, the council, the donors, the teachers. If I fell even once, they would devour me. For a moment, I saw the cage behind the crown. It was real. It was also not an excuse. Then you should have fallen alone, I said. You tried to bury me under you. Celeste's eyes shone, but the tears did not fall. Maybe she had finally learned that tears were useless when no audience believed in them. You changed, she whispered. No, I said. I emptied the pencil case. You were always inside it. She stared at me as if I had slapped her. Then she turned and walked away beneath the library lamps, smaller with every step. Months later, after the appeals failed and the Academy quietly replaced half the student leadership committee, I received a letter from the National Laureate Board. Thick paper, blue seal, official language. My scholarship eligibility had been confirmed. My examination record was clean. My reporting cooperation had been noted confidentially. I read it twice in the kitchen while Julian ate cereal directly from the box and pretended not to watch me. Good news, he asked. I folded the letter carefully. In my first life, paper had been used to condemn me. Notes, statements, notices, withdrawals. In this one, paper still had weight, but my hands no longer shook under it. Good enough, I said. He grinned through a mouthful of cereal. Are you going to frame it? I looked toward my desk, where the transparent bag had become my daily pencil case, and the old fabric one remained flattened under a stack of textbooks. No, I said. I'm going to file it. That made him groan because he was 14 and allergic to anything practical. But I meant it. Some girls build shrines to victory. I built records, copies in folders, backups on drives, receipts,
Logs. Proof.
not because I wanted to live afraid forever, but because I had learned that truth without evidence is treated like noise when powerful people prefer music. On the first day of the next term, I walked past Hall D and stopped at the inspection table stacked against the wall. The red evidence tape was gone. The courtyard had been washed. New candidates hurried by with new pencil cases, laughing about new fears. For them, the scandal had already become a story with sharp edges sanded down by repetition. The year Celeste Anwin got caught. The year half the cohort hid notes. The year the examination office went crazy with inspections. Nobody said the year Mira Vale emptied her pencil case and refused to be framed. That was fine. I no longer needed the whole school to say my name correctly. I only needed my name to stay mine. I reached into my transparent bag and touched the cracked ruler, the plain eraser, the black pens lined together. Ordinary things. Harmless things. Weapons, if you knew when to place them in the light. Then I walked to class with my head up, past the fountain where Celeste used to hold court, past the notice board where the revised merit list hung behind glass, past the students who still lowered their voices when I approached because they had not decided whether I was brave or dangerous. I hoped they never decided. Brave girls get praised after they suffer. Dangerous girls make people think twice before trying. And as the bell rang over St. Vay Academy, clear and cold and impossible to ignore, I smiled for the first time without checking who might use it against me.